Okay, we're going to learn about how local labs work in AccuTrack and AccuSQL. Local labs are a very powerful tool for you to differentiate the various activities that students can sign into in the various labs, what information is presented to them at sign-in or on the main sign-in screen, and the kind of information you collect can be at the local lab level. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about are categories and activities. Those are the items that students pick when they sign in. And just look at these for a second. So I have a list of categories and then the various activities that students can select underneath them. Okay, I have a rather large list here. Now I'm going to go to my setup and look at my activity screen options. Okay, so what I want to do is show activity screen, so I'm not checking do not show. I'm showing instructors. I don't want to ask to report to instructor. I'm showing a service, and I want to uncheck registered activities. So I want to show you what that looks like. Now my lab setting right now is default all. Okay, default all, think of it as show everything. So I'm not showing just activities in labs, I'm showing all of the various activities available in my system. Okay, so I return to my sign-in screen and I sign in with the student ID. And now I see all of the various categories that are available and all of the activities that appear underneath them. So as you can see, if I'm in a tutoring center, it may not make a lot of sense for me to show health screening, for example. But right now it's wide open. I'm set to default all, and all of the various activities are available to me, all of the various services, etc. Now we'll continue on here with the default all lab and look at categories and activities a little closer. Now here, let's look at computer usage, for example. I have academic and personal use as activities, but right here I have them set to global registration. So think of that as any student can sign in and pick that particular activity. Now that works in combination with registration. Okay, registration are the classes that students are registered for. And I can go click here on registration, and let's look at course tutoring, for example. So these are the students registered for Anatomy and Physiology 1, 2, Biology 1, 2, etc. So those are my various classes and whichever students are registered for it. Now I want to enable registration to limit the selection values that students can pick. So in my activity screen options, I'm going to click right here, only show registered classes. Okay, now that I've done that, I'll return to the sign-in screen and let's sign in with that same student ID. And as you can see, I have my global activities, academic and personal use. Well, counseling is global. Course tutoring, well, I don't have the giant list anymore. I only have anatomy and physiology and biology, which Chetan in this case is registered for. He's taking an English poetry class and he's taking calculus. So I limited significantly the course selection. However, I'm still showing all of my global activities and registered classes. Okay, now that may not make sense to have counseling in my tutoring center. Now I'm going to show counseling in my default all lab because it's set to global registration here. Okay, if I uncheck global registration, no students registered for counseling, then I can make that go away in my default lab. And now counseling no longer appears in the pick list for the student. Okay, so student is seeing registered classes. They're going to see every service type in my system since I'm on default all. They're going to see any global activities, and in this case they're seeing the professor that teaches the various classes. Okay, but now we're going to go in and change to the math lab and see how that works. So how do I change the lab, and what am I talking about with changing the lab? Okay, you can change labs, local labs in the system and set them up the way you'd like them to be, but this is important. Then in the math lab itself, you need to tell that sign-in station that it's sitting in the math lab, okay? And you do that by going to System and then Lab IDs and then View Modify Local Lab ID. Okay, so I'm going to change now to my math lab. And if this was a sign-in station at the math lab, I would do exactly this. Okay, so I've changed to the math lab. Now let's go look a little closer at categories and activities here. Okay, now I have some various categories. And as you can see, as I go through these, I want to look at available in these specific labs. Okay, so let's look at math classes, for example. I have a series of math classes here, but I've got them all attached to my math lab, as you can see here. Now, what I mean by that is if I go and specify which lab calculus is available in this case, I've said math lab. Now, it's a one-to-many relationship. I can make this calculus available in various other labs if I'd like to. For example, in the computer lab, if I want a student to sign in for Calc 1 or calculus, then I can do so here. Okay. Also, in my computer usage, I have academic and personal use. I have them available in several labs, including my math lab. Okay. So now we've set the lab to math lab. And I'm going to show you a basic example, and then we'll go into more detail. But as you can see, it says, Welcome to the Math Lab. I've turned off lots of my buttons. The only button I'm showing on the main screen is Appointments. Now the same student signs in. And now I've locked my category to math classes. Chetan is only seeing his one registered calculus math class. Okay, so I've taken away everything else because I've set the local lab to math lab. Okay, so let's go into our sign-in setup here and see how I locked that category. Under Activity Screen Options, you can see, first of all, it says Lab, Math Lab. So I'm setting up my sign-in setup specifically for my math lab here. And in my math lab, I've locked my category to math classes. So that's why the student doesn't have to pick a category. Now I'm showing instructors, I'm showing registered activities in my math lab. Also, I've changed my title, my information that the student will see, including the welcome message. Now if we go into a little more detail, let's just close Sign-in Setup and let's go to the main control panel here. Okay, see how it has a lab drop-down box. So that means everything I'm setting up here in my back-end control panel is related to my math lab. Okay, so I can specifically determine how I want the system to operate in my math lab versus my default all versus my computer lab versus reading lab or whatever else it may be. Okay? So you can completely change the rules, the sign-in process on each local lab. Now to change gears completely here, let's go switch my lab ID to my cafeteria, which is a completely different setup. And then return to sign-in screen. Okay, so now welcome to the cafeteria. I've completely changed the background. I've got a different welcome message. I'm not showing any buttons at all. A student signs in now, same student. And I've asked to update information for that lab. We'll get into that in a second. And I've even got some profile fields, which I'll also show you. I'm locked to dining services, says happy dining. Meal is my new label. And let's say that Chetan is signing in for lunch. Now also notice here, it says signed in at, auto sign out at. So I'm not even collecting sign-outs when people sign into my cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I only care that they visited, so I'm not even tracking their time. Okay, so let's see how all that works. And remember, I'm still set to my cafeteria, so let's go to Sign-in Setup, and I'm on my cafeteria. See, I have the different background. Here's my welcome message. Here's where I'm not showing any buttons. I go to my activity screen, locked my category to dining services. I'm not showing instructors. I'm not showing services. I'm not showing anything except category and activity. Here's where I changed my labels. Tutor selection, I'm not doing anything for that. Okay, so again, if I change to Math Lab, different rules. Now this one says show tutor selection screen. If I switch to my default all lab, it's showing tutor selection screen. So I can set that up however I'd like that to be. Now, how did I get my activity to be where it wasn't signing students out? Okay, if I go look at my dining services here, there it is available in my cafeteria, as we saw with math. That's how I can show those things in my cafeteria. But on each of these items, I've clicked sign in only, so I don't care about them signing out. I only care that they visited for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Okay, so now that I've got that set up and I can I've shown how I can have completely different behavior in each of these different labs, let's go into a little detail about some of the information you can collect at the local lab level. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about here is student demographics. So I'll click Student Demographics, and then I'm going to click Profile Setup. Now I can set up these profile questions at the local lab level. So for example, let's look at my default lab here. When I switch to that, I've got things like major, minor, and I'm just clicking my question navigator and looking at my question and then my answers here. Here's my gender, ethnicity, GPA, etc., etc. All of those profile questions are related to my default all lab. I switch to my math lab, and I have 3 different questions. And now these I'm not showing, so I'm only showing 3 questions. I don't have to use all 10. Here I've got, do you like math, age group, and are you interested in becoming a math tutor? So those are my math lab profile questions. And then let's go look at cafeteria. And it's, are you a vegetarian or are you a vegan? So completely different questions. Now, how do I enable these update profile information to be displayed to a student? Again, let's go look at what lab we're in. Okay, I'm in my cafeteria. So now I'm going to click on Student Demographics Setup, and I'm going to update my profile in my cafeteria. Now what that means is when a student signs in, the first time they sign in, after I set Update Profile on, they will be presented with a screen where we can collect that demographic information for the student. Okay, we go back to the sign-in, same ID, and it's asking me to update my information. Now here is my 10 regular profile questions. And then here are the 2 related to the cafeteria. So are you a vegetarian or a vegan? That student signs in, picks whatever, lunch, let's say, and they will not be presented with the question again. A new student comes in, and they get the update information screen. And then they go sign in for lunch. Okay, now let's go set this back to the math lab and see how that behaves. Return to sign-in screen, and it says welcome to the math lab, completely different display. So I'm locked to math classes. I have calculus. I have Sarah Smith. I'm looking at the tutors that assist, in this case, with calculus. I pick a tutor, and I sign in. Now, I didn't get any update profile information because, remember, that's at the local lab level. So we'll go to Student Demographics, And remember, do you like math? Are you interested in becoming a math tutor? Those are the questions I'm going to display here. But let's go update profile on right now for my math lab. And let's see if anybody's signed in. If not, we'll sign them out real quick. And I'll do a manual. So we'll just sign Chetan out. Okay, and let's go return to sign-in screen and use his ID again. So now he's getting an update profile in the math lab, and we're seeing the math profile questions. He goes about the process, he picks his math class, and he signs in. Okay, another thing I can do is present custom surveys at the local lab level. So let's go to feedback surveys and then custom surveys here. Okay, I've got a math survey and I can preview that. Let's see what that looks like. Do you have a calculator? Do you like calculus? What do you like in the math center? Okay, so we'll go set our local lab to math lab, which it already is. And then what I want to do is publish my custom survey. Okay, now I already have a math survey here, so I can just go ahead and use that one. But what I'm doing is saying, when do I want this math survey to be available? And I'm saying February 16th, how about through the end of May? It will be presented once during the valid from and to range per student. So if you wanted to collect it every week, you could publish this survey on a weekly basis, and then you can run reports on all of the publications or one publication of that survey. But anyway, I'm going to say at sign in, and I'm also, you'll see I'm presenting this math survey in my math lab. Okay, so now I sign in, and there is my custom math survey that I've created. Now it's asking me to update my information, and there's my math survey. And then I go about my math sign-in. So if we set the lab to cafeteria, we could have a completely different survey that comes up. And let's see if I have a custom survey for my cafeteria. I do not. So let's go ahead and add a new survey here. When I click Add, it gives me the survey builder. So I'll say, do you like chicken? We'll make it radio buttons. And then I'll say yes and no, and I can do weighted averages, and I have a whole video on creating surveys, but I'm just going to build one real quick to show you how it works with the local lab, and we'll do some checkboxes. And I'll say salad, okay, so now I've got this survey, so I'll save and exit. And it's called Food You Like Survey. So let's go publish that survey now. I'll do add and then pick my Food You Like survey. Make that valid from to, so we'll say the 9th through about the end of March. I can present that to students, groups of students, or students and tutors. We'll do students and present it, sign in, and put it in the cafeteria. Okay, so now I'm set to my cafeteria. I go back to my sign in, enter a student ID. There's the Food You Like survey that I just created. Submit survey, update information, presented with my profile information for the cafeteria. Lock to dining services, pick whatever meal that I'm coming in for, sign in, no tutor selection, signed in, and auto signed out. Okay, so now I'll go set back to default lab. And let's go look at how we can do reports here. Okay, so looking at feedback surveys, custom survey reports is the first one let's look at. So let's look at my food you like survey. Now, I'm not going to have anything in here hardly. And there you go. I've had one person answer that they said yes, they like chicken. And let's see, one likes salad, one likes Doritos, which shows me my 50-50 split. But what I'm seeing is that report is specific to my cafeteria in this case. Here's a math lab report, my math survey. So 2 people have a calculator, 2 out of 2 like calculus, and 2 like the staff, and 1 likes the vending machines. Okay, so again, that's specific to that local lab. And here's where you can say only this publication or all publications of that survey. Another report I can run is show the custom survey with profile fields included. So that was the other, remember, the profile field specific to the local lab. So do you have a calculator? Of those that said yes they do, 1 is a grad student, 1 is a junior, and then I'm seeing all of their other profile information from their default lab as well. So do you like calculus? 1 grad student said yes, and what is good in Math Center? 1 grad student said staff, 1 junior said vending machines. So I'm contrasting my custom survey with my local lab profile information, and also my default all information, profile information as well. If I ran that same thing for my food you like, again, I don't have any data yet, but we can take a look. So do you like chicken? Of the people that like chicken, I have 1 that's non-degree seeking. And non-degree seeking, I have 1 that likes Doritos, 1 that likes salad. Okay, and then here's my default all 10 profile fields as well. Okay, now in reports I can filter most of my reports, or many of my visit reports anyway, by local lab. So let's go do visit tracking by activity. Or how about today is a good example, since we've been doing some sign-ins today. So let's see, I've had 3 people come in for lunch. Remember, auto sign out, so I didn't give them any time. I had 1 person come in for calculus, since we've been doing this presentation. Now, I can limit by lab, so let's run that same report, but now let's run it only for the cafeteria. Okay, so as you can see, I can see people that have come in for lunch. I don't have anybody that came in for calculus. That's because when they signed in for calculus, they were in my math lab. When they signed in for lunch, they were in my cafeteria. If I switch this now to my math lab, I should see my 1 math sign in. Okay, and there it is. And I can do combinations. Show me people that have signed in for math and cafeteria. If I don't pick anything, well, then it's the default all. It'll show all sign-ins for that period from any lab. If I look at student demographics report, there's another one that I've got student profile visited, and student profile for current lab. Okay, so when I run that report, it's showing me all of my majors and minors. It's showing me all of my main profile information. Now, why is it doing that? Well, it's doing it because it's for the local lab that the system is set to. So now I'm in default all, but let's go change to cafeteria and run that same report. So now I've got 3 that are vegetarians, yes, and I've got 3 that are vegan, no. So as you can see, you have a lot of control about what's displayed, how it's displayed, what the rules are for sign-ins all throughout the system. Remember the control panel, you can set up all this stuff per lab, so you can completely control how the sign-ins take place, the information you're collecting from students, and then you can filter reports, use local labs in several different places in order to filter your information. So if it's set to math, you can see only what's happening in math or what's happening in cafeteria, reading lab, whatever your labs are. So this is how you can separate a single database and have complete control over how it works in each of your different labs.